Well, and let's be real, we take for granted if, you go down the street to a brick and mortar store and you buy a product, we essentially assume, most consumers assume it's safe. Somebody's, had eyes over it. And in the cannabis industry, we don't have that level of oversight. So and especially if you go into the unregulated hemp marketplace, who knows what's in those products? There's nobody checking it. And the data that comes out shows that there's very valid reasons to be concerned as you are, whether it's vapes or, these unregulated products. So it's not about strict regulations, but it's about minimum standards so we can verify and give consumers trust that their product's not going to hurt them at the end of the day.
We're back with another episode of Meet Unshackled at MJ Unpacked. Lovely conference, lots of interesting conversations, lots of interesting people, and we are pleased to bring you another individual who I'm just getting to know myself, but I know he's involved in a not-for-profit that I think is pretty cool, and we're going to hear a little bit about that. We're going to hear a little bit about him and what he does for a living in the cannabis space and the not-for-profit work that he's doing. So please introduce you to David. Dave.
Thanks so much.
Dave.
Good to see you, Demitri.
We've gotten into a big discussion about the David thing. Introduce yourself to the audience real quickly.
Yeah, so David Valencourt, or Dave Valencourt. A lot of people in the industry know me as David. The vice chair for ASTM International's Committee D37 on Cannabis. That's one of the hats I wear. I've been an active member there since it was formed in 2017. I've got a consulting firm, the GMP Collective, where we help take compliance, regulatory requirements, and best practices and actually translate those into operational excellence for businesses, both ancillary and plant touching. And then last year, I was able to translate my real passion and where a lot of my time and energy and focus has been spent into a nonprofit, the S3 Collective, which was incorporated last August. S3 standing for Standards, Science, and Safety, to bridge the gap between evidence-based science into standards to impact policy and drive harmonization and safety for consumers.
Well, there's a lot to unpack here. This should be MJ Unpacked.
Ultimate Unpacked. See what we can do in 15 minutes, right?
Yeah, well, we got that. So, but real quickly, ASTM, a lot of people don't know what that is.
Yeah, so 1898, trains were literally falling off tracks because the quality and consistency of the steel on the T-rails was not standardized, and that was kind of a big problem for commerce. And so about a dozen engineers got together and formed what was then called the American Society for the Testing of Materials. Fast forward to 126 years later, they have their impact of consensus standards development. It's industry and regulator led, so it's a consensus process with equal voting from commercial interests and the non-commercial interests. Mm-hmm. It meets the World Trade Organization's technical barriers to trade, and they're responsible for multiple trillions of dollars of our economy. Is essentially this self-regulatory standards-driven structure for over 90 industries. ASTM, I think the biggest place you might see it is grab a Sharpie or a dry erase marker. You'll see a little conforms to ASTM D4236 on there. That means when your kids accidentally put a marker in their mouth, there's not a bunch of toxins in there that's going to send them to the hospital.
Oh, that's nice. It takes care of the survival of the fittest concerns. What are they doing in cannabis?
Yeah, so some folks reached out to them in 2015. There was some grower in Illinois, and I believe the state of Hawaii had reached out before, as well as Health Canada, and was like, "You guys are the standards group. Do you have anything with cannabis?" And at the time, they didn't. And so after about 2 years of vetting, the board of ASTM International voted to approve the formation of Committee D37 on Cannabis. So we've got 800 members. It's all volunteers, including myself, across 30 countries. We've got Health Canada, U.S. Pharmacopoeia, we've got state regulators, FDA's become involved now, MSOs, you name it, all at the table developing minimum consensus standards together.
Are there any free market peasants from the villages in Thailand involved?
There are some folks from Thailand, but I know some free market folks. I haven't seen you there in a while, so
Yes.
we'll get you back.
I'm well known as a free market, no licensing cap advocate. I'd like to think if my grandmother wanted to grow and sell marijuana, how could I make it as least complicated for her in the mountains of Oaxaca as possible?
I love it.
And, that's just my little philosophical perspective. The reality exists somewhere in between here, and one day we'll be the Borg. Okay, so D37, that's fantastic. Congratulations. You're the vice chair?
Yeah, I'm their vice chair.
Wow, you're like the guy to know.
I guess you could say that. Yeah, it's a lot. It's a labor of love. It's an important role. It definitely keeps me up a lot at night. The responsibility.
If you brought me onto the committee, I'd probably end up being like the Marjorie Taylor Greene. This is like this anchor that won't move.
Yeah, you will keep me busy. That's for sure.
It is what it is. I mean, you need all types,
You do, honestly. I mean, and the beauty of the ASM process is it forces decision making. There's no stalemates. It's not chess where you can end up in a stalemate. There's essentially the ultimate dispute resolution process, so that we get to something that we can all agree on that works.
Right, and not that it's important, but the audience might want to know this. A lot of my philosophical spiel comes from seeing how those people with the least education, the least amount of money, the least family history, the least opportunity can participate in commerce. And licensing caps have made me realize this, that yes, there are some benefits to licensing cap, but nothing outweighs the importance of keeping commerce accessible to the people who have the least, and that is a heavy load on my shoulders and my mentality and my opinions and my philosophy, because I want to keep government and the systems and structures that we create as simple as possible. So for that individual that has nothing, that is not even born yet, to be able to access things. So I have this philosophical bent that's a passion of mine. So, but it's not reality. But it's okay.
It's not too far off, though. I mean, one of the beautiful things of the ASTM process, without getting into all the nerdy details of what means consensus, is that it's one interest, one vote. So when Boeing and McConnell Douglas show up in the FAAs there, and a small, private aircraft, a hobbyist shows up on an aircraft standard that might impact them, both Boeing and that small aircraft hobbyist get the same voting power. They each get one vote and one vote only. So there you are.
Maybe Orville Wright can come back.
Let's bring him back.
They probably wouldn't let him do what he wants to do. There'd be some sort of liability somewhere. But you're clearly an expert on the subject, and that position, you deserve it. It's fantastic.
Thank you.
It's good to know more about that. And that obviously led into the GNP Collective, because companies need to bring you on board to help figure this out.
Yeah, standards and regulations can, be difficult to interpret. And in a lot of ways, I think even to your point, like, they're intentionally vague because they put the opportunity on the operator to interpret and determine how they're going to run their own business. Like, there's a set of goals and requirements you have to meet, but how you get there is up to your own business to do. And there's more than one way to, create an edible safely. But at the end of the day, it just needs to be safe and not have pesticides or, shards of metal in there that's going to, go down your throat and, cut it open. It's not Goldschlager that's going to, make it go in faster. We need to make sure these products are safe.
Yeah.
So how to translate that, it can get really, be intimidating. So
yes, and surprisingly, there are grandmothers out there that are putting shards of metal in gummies. Grandma. Just kidding. No, but they do. There's surprisingly unscrupulous players in large-scale commercial activity, which is sad but true, especially with pesticides. So it's not just there are necessary things. But so GNP Collective, you started that when?
Yeah, so I started that in 2018.
2018.
Yep. Thought, how hard could it be to run your own business? I went to business school for a couple of years before I transferred into a science degree program, and I think it's really my passion. There's Patagonia is one of my really inspirations. The owner, YVON, I forgot how to pronounce his name. He wrote "Let My People Go Surfing." The
clothes?
Yeah, the clothes.
Oh, Patagonia.
Yeah, got a book, "Let My People Go Surfing," and it's like the story of an accidental businessman that just wants to do good, have limited oversight and regulations, but make the world a better place and make a living.
Yeah, no, well, that's fantastic. So the GNP Collective started 2018. Where are you based out of?
Colorado Springs is home for me.
Yep.
We've got a team of about a dozen folks that are all across the country. We're all virtual. I have a couple consultants in Canada, and I've done some work with folks in Brazil and Colombia as well.
No, I mean, this is a very important aspect of the development of the cannabis industry, and it's going to be the story of the cannabis industry as we cut across state lines, as we cut across international lines. People better make sure that they have things up to a certain scale, a certain level, and you're the one that helps translate the kind of government activity into what the private sector needs to be doing, kind of like thing?
Yeah, essentially, and it's like, it's kind of like this two-way street of, learning from everybody.
Yes.
Right? How do the operators? What is the common core theme of like a minimum best practice that operators can get into regulations through standards, and then how do you translate those standards back into operational execution for the betterment of the greater good, and to keep your business healthy and profitable and safe.
Yeah, no, it is an absolutely fascinating dynamic. That's fantastic, and we're going to talk a little bit more about GNP because I want to make sure people know how to get in touch with you there, and how important it is for their business to be engaged with you in that capacity. But let's talk a little bit about the S3 Collective. What is that? Where did that come from?
Yeah, so with the work I've done at D37's committee at ASTM, it's again all volunteer, bottom up. And it's where the technical nerds are really hashing out the details that matter. But then how to translate that both to recruit, get folks to understand the impact of them so that they can adopt and use those standards, to get the, both regulators and the researchers in the room to help fill the data gaps to make decisions around, should we have a limit on pesticides? What is it? Does it matter if you're vaping versus ingesting it? We need that data to do that, and so we need to pull the right, the experts in from academia and other places. So that's the goal of the S3 Collective, because that is a gap. There's trade associations that do the lobbying work. They bring thought leadership. They put white papers out there, but there's a major gap between the standards, connecting that to the science and making sure that it's informed for safety. And so that's what we fill.
I personally I've tried vaping twice, and both of the times I tried it, I was like, I didn't feel comfortable because I wasn't sure about the level of safety and standards that were in vape pens. It's a lot different than flower.
Very much so.
Flower's a lot simpler. Maybe some pesticides, kind of simple. But I remember that very specifically. I was thinking to myself, I really don't know what's in here.
Well, and let's be real, we take for granted if, you go down the street to a brick and mortar store and you buy a product, we essentially assume, most consumers assume it's safe. Somebody's, had eyes over it. And in the cannabis industry, we don't have that level of oversight. So and especially if you go into the unregulated hemp marketplace, who knows what's in those products? There's nobody checking it. And the data that comes out shows that there's very valid reasons to be concerned as you are, whether it's vapes or, these unregulated products. So it's not about strict regulations, but it's about minimum standards so we can verify and give consumers trust that their product's not going to hurt them at the end of the day.
I like how you keep saying minimum.
Minimum.
I love how you say that.
Got to start somewhere, right? It shouldn't be onerous.
It appeals to the libertarian in me. And I wasn't such a hardcore libertarian until the cannabis industry, when I recognized how wrong government, medical professionals, politicians, members of the media could get it, or just remain silent. Because a lot of them just, let's be honest, in the 70s, 80s, 90s, they kind of recognized they were smoking pot at home. They just want to keep quiet.
Hey, silence is a decision too, right?
Right. I love that. You know what? I'm going to write that down. Give me a second here. But you got me on that one, bro. That's a beautiful saying. Dusty, you missed a great saying. Silence
is a decision too.
That should be a T-shirt.
I think that might be the next S3 Collective, or the first S3 Collective swag. I mean,
silence is a decision too. So back to S3 Collective.
Yeah,
I love powerful philosophical statements like that.
Sometimes they just roll. I love it.
That's just. I don't think I've seen that on a T-shirt. Oh, anyways, whatever. But to talk a little bit more about the S3 Collective. What else do people need to know?
Yeah, we are a 501c3. We are really, committed to bridging the gap and building this coalition. So, like, Demitri, I've been following you. I know Alexa, did a an episode with you who will be on again soon. Bringing your perspective, because you're spot on. Like, the libertarian mindset is so valid. And let me just go down that rabbit hole for a second, if I could, bring it back to S3, what we really want to talk about. But there's a difference between I'm going to go to my farmer's market and it's my farmer down the street that's got 40 acres maybe that's making that's growing the tomatoes that I'm going to buy, versus a multinational corporation that has thousands of employees that's also selling the same tomatoes that's going into the grocery store. An impact of, the impact that a company of that size can have on consumer safety is orders of magnitude different than what the farmer down the street that I've known and trust.
Right.
How do we have trust that the Kroger grocery store has vetted it? That's where we need those minimum standards. And so we've got to bridge that gap and create that minimum framework and make it accessible for everybody, right? Like it shouldn't prohibit small operators with a lower risk profile and lower impact from being able to do business, just like a craft, beer. So that's what we're really standing for, and it's based on evidence. There's lots of opinions. How you get to a consensus is data and perspectives coming together, and science is never settled. So we got to start somewhere, and we're really just facilitating that. So we want all the people across the board. We want the FDA. Let's bring the DEA in, bring law enforcement in. Where's their perspective? They have legitimate concerns. They're out there protecting our society. Maybe they're not always doing the best job that we always agree with, but we need their perspectives because they're legitimate. And then we need the scientists, and we need the public health folks. And then we need the operators because they have to live with this, and they're the ones that are trying to create safe products that don't want to kill their consumers. So we need everybody's perspectives at the table and a way to filter that and then get it back out in means of like actionable standards. And that's what we're doing.
I love what you're doing. And I think maybe, over the years, with my highly libertarian perspective, I've become a little bit too hung up on the concept that, like, say, architecture. Let's remove this from cannabis. An architect, a child has a dream. I want houses one day to look like mushrooms. Okay, so that child grows up with that dream. I want houses to look like mushrooms. But then that child runs into standards, law, taxes, all these other
barriers,
zoning,
yep.
all these rules, all these regulations, all these systems, all these foundations that have been set up to stop that child who at age 1, 2, or 3 said, you know what, houses should never have been shaped like teepees or like boxes. They should have always been mushrooms. But they can't get there because we've created this society, this world that we live in with all these standards, all these rules, all these regulations. I mean, most are justified. They have their purpose. They have their reason. But in my kind of like crazy little, I'd rather live in that world where a child could build the mushroom-shaped house, and the walls might collapse because they're out too far, but at least he got to experiment in his dreams and make them come true and then fail. You know what I'm saying? Weird.
Have you heard of Bishop's Castle at all?
Yeah, I recognize that.
It's in southern Colorado. It's this guy that created this castle on Forest Service land. It's got a functioning drawbridge, a moat. It's got all these stairs, and no regulations, no oversight. Fought the government for 40 years. Just bringing me back to that.
I love it.
You should check it out.
I will.
Come up to Colorado sometime.
But it's the same thing with dreams and hopes, and
it's not a dream crusher.
Yeah.
But let's also, because one of the sucky realities, right, is a lot of the rules and regulations that have been put in place have been because of disasters, right? Like thousands of people dying because of and all the thousands of birth defects because of thalidomide, which was a drug that was given to women in Europe during their first trimester that caused birth defects. Now we have all these, you end up getting this overreaction because there's a public outcry because of a public health crisis, and we get really strict regulations because of it. And so the more we can be proactive as a society and create these standards before we have a public health outbreak and have these crazy onerous regulations that crush the mushroom dreams.
Yeah.
That's the only way that I've learned and seen in history that we're going to be able to prevent what your legitimate fears.
Yeah, maybe COVID rattled me to the point where I saw too many people overreacting to a situation based on the fear that was pushed by the media, who's obviously just trying to draw attention, like the little boy who cried wolf, to their outlet so they can sell ads. It's not any sort of conspiracy. They're not all working together. It's just people trying to make a living. I am a reporter on CNN, and I need to make sure this is exciting so more people watch, because otherwise I'm going to be out of a job. And it's at some level it's functioning like that. And COVID, we saw mandates and cancellation and stuff. It was incredible when babies and children weren't dying. Yes, elderly people were dying. COVID is real, but the reaction by society about what was happening terrified me as to where we're going to go. And let me, it was not just me too, because I'm like, okay, like if we keep along this path, 50,000 years from now, we're going to be like 100,000 years from now, we're going to be like the Borg, or it's going to be like Matrix. I'm not a weird conspiracy theorist. 100,000 years from now. And then there'll be Neil, because that human spirit will never disappear, and then it'll be constant tension. And I said that to my mom. She said, no, Demitri, 500 years. I was like, Mom, she's like, no, I'm from a village. And anyways, but it's a fascinating conversation. And I'm thrilled that you are leading this. I mean, ASTM, GMP Collective, S3. How do people, they need to look up the ASTM D37, is that Google it?
Yeah, you can Google that. ASTM's got a website for us, astmcannabis.org.
Yep.
Check that out. Our next meetings in June will be in person in Philadelphia, June 10th to 12th. We've got an amazing global workshop with regulators and industry and labs from across the world.
Can people watch that online?
No, it's in person only. That's one of the tough parts.
Why don't you just broadcast it?
I need money.
Put it on Zoom.
I know this will be our third of 3 workshops. The first 2 were all virtual, and one of them is recorded online. The one we did with Thailand, South Africa, and Australia.
If I knew there was a live event and you were running the show, and I would watch.
Well, I do a monthly webinar series through GMP Collective that I think I've seen you on before. Keep promoting it. When things go wrong, we've got the Jillian from Canberra coming on, depending on when this airs, at the end of April. They're all available on our website, gmpcollective.com, and then you can get in contact with me from the contact form there. Or finally, last but not least, go to s3collective.org and learn more about us. Sign up for our newsletter. Donate. Come consider joining one of our committees. We need a volunteer effort contingency.
I love the work you're doing. The understanding of the different philosophical perspectives is very important, and it's inevitable. There will be this world that I kind of don't want to live in anymore, but I'm trying to find a ranch somewhere. Where's this guy with the drawbridge? What is it?
Yeah, Bishop's Castle. Yeah. Southern Colorado. I'll help you find some acreage.
Yes.
Let's go hang out there.
That is the plan. I will be there. But so thank you for joining us, and this has been fantastic. Silence is a decision too. You're going to see that on a T-shirt near you, and it's going to be for the S3 Collective. So thank you again, David. And we will see you on another episode of Meat Unshackled.
Yeah, it's so great to be here, Demitri. This is awesome. Thank you.
Thanks.